The Colorado Buffaloes and the Kansas Jayhawks, they have a lot at stake this weekend. Who's going to come out victorious?
You are Locked On College Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What is up, everybody? This is a Locked On Buffs, Locked On Jayhawks crossover, and it's brought to you by FanDuel. You could start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. I'm Kevin Borba. This is Derek Johnson, and I'm Locked On Buffs. He's Locked On Jayhawks, and we're going to be talking about one of the biggest matchups in the Big 12 this weekend. The Buffs are heading to Kansas City, Missouri, to take on the Jayhawks at Arrowhead Stadium in a game that I think has a lot at stake. And I think most people around the country may not realize this, but Colorado has no room for error in this Big 12 race. There's too many teams in the mix, and Kansas has no room for error if they want to make a bowl game. So let's talk about Colorado from the Kansas perspective. What do you think? How do you think this game has changed, right? At the beginning of the year, this was looking like the stretch of death for Colorado, where they had Utah, Kansas, Oklahoma State, and now it's not looking as difficult. But how does Kansas view this?
Yeah, I mean, at the beginning of the year, too, like this almost looked like BYU was thought to be maybe a 5-6 win team last week. Then Colorado, it was like the over-under win total, I think, was 6.5. And then Baylor was thought, oh, maybe Dave Aranda would be fired by the time you played them next week. And now it's like, no, Baylor's good. Colorado's a college football playoff contender, and BYU was undefeated when you had to play them. So things have certainly changed. It felt like there were some similarities with this year's Colorado team to last year's team at the beginning of the year. I mean, you have the close win with North Dakota State, the 18-point loss to Nebraska, where it just looked like they were out physicaled. And I don't understand what has happened to Nebraska and Colorado since then. I don't know what the big difference has been, but it has been everything for both of those teams. And I've been super impressed with Colorado to this point. And I think, they'd be a deserving Big 12 champion. Obviously, they got to finish it out and everything. But I think it's just in a league where a lot of the teams are very close together, right? I mean, we've seen that with Kansas winning these last 2 weeks, where, say, the top team in the Big 12 might be the 15th best team in the country or the 10th best team in the country. And, the bottom 2 or 3 in the Big 12 might still be like the 40th, 50th best team in the country, but somebody has to lose some of these games. You see a situation where Colorado is set up for it in a real way. Because I say all the time, like a lot of times the one-score games are going to go to who has the advantage at coach and quarterback. And with Colorado, you're going to feel good about both of those things. But I think the biggest thing I've been impressed with from last year to this year, it has to be the defense. It's been so much better for Colorado. I've loved what the pass rush has done. I mean, obviously they're leading the Big 12 in sacks. BJ Green with over 5 of them, 6 players with 3 sacks or more on the season for Colorado. I think that's been what's really made things different, because now you have this setup almost like those, prime Peyton Manning Colts teams, where it's like, hey, we're going to throw it across the yard. Like we're going to get leads, and then we're going to be able to close it with Dwight Freeney and Robert Mathis. And just been really impressed with what they've been able to do after things looked a little dire at the beginning of the year.
Yeah, I remember I did an episode after the Nebraska loss, and I was like, New Year, same problems, right? It felt the exact same. It was like, can't protect anybody, very reliant on the offense. And all of a sudden, they flipped a switch. And I think it was that UCF game where they shut down what at that point was the number 1 rushing attack in the country. And I think Colorado everyone's going to remember that video where that guy's like, oh, got my swagger back. Like, that's what Colorado was. Like, they lost their swagger. They got it back, and they found an identity on both sides of the ball, right? And I think the thing that stands out to me about this Kansas team is they're gritty, they're tough, and you look at the record and it's 4-6, right? So this is the definition of a trap game, quote unquote trap game, because Colorado's hot and Kansas is also hot, but you look at their record and it's like Kansas is losing this game, right? And then you go visit our friends over at the odds makers, who they know a little bit of something, right? They know what happened to Jalen, I think, and they know what happened they know what's going to happen in these games, right? They know what's going to happen. And Kansas is only a 3-point dog, and Colorado only has a 54.5% chance according to ESPN's FBI. And so this Kansas team looking really gritty, looking really good. Why is this such a close line? What do you think about that?
Well, it's one thing when you look at the record, right? And then you have a lot of the odds makers, they're using systems, formulas, analytics that are looking at the process of the game. And the process of the game, Kansas, I tweeted this out there over the weekend. The Chiefs lost to the Bills. KU football has a better point differential this season than the Chiefs do. And the reason why is because they have 5 one-score losses on the season. They have 5 games that they led in the fourth quarter that they couldn't hold on to. And weird things happened in a lot of them. Some of them were just them making mistakes. But like West Virginia, they were up 2 scores with under 4 minutes to go, and they lost. UNLV, they gave up like a 12-play drive 12-minute drive, at the end of the game. There was a fumble. A lot of people saw it on social media that like 5 guys on Kansas couldn't recover that would have sealed the game. Like just things like that were happening all season long. And at one point they flashed in the graphic of the Iowa State game when they were 2-6 at the time, and they showed point differentials of teams dating back to the year 2000. They were the best point differential of any 2-6 team at the time. So since then, you had the best point differential. You've since earned 2 top 25 wins in a row. For the first time in program history, mind you, including last week giving BYU their first loss of the season, doing it on the road. This is the best 4-6 team in the country. I think that's the case, and I think that's why this spread ends up being a little bit closer than you might have thought.
Yeah, and really,
by the way, FanDuel 30% profit boost if you're going to be in the state of Kansas for the game.
Hey, I was in the state of Tennessee this past week, and I learned that you cannot bet on college sports, which was a fun experience. I literally was like, Shedeur Sanders is going to torch this defense. I need you guys. Where are you guys at? The thing that's interesting to me about Kansas is they flipped a switch too, right? And I don't know if it was as drastic as Colorado, but they go and you just talked about the stretch a little bit. They lose to UNLV off of that was a disastrous fumble. Like I think almost everyone on the defense touched it. There was like 3 guys that you could tell were trying to pick it up and run rather than fall on it. Like it was just like if you just put your body on that ball, that game is over, right? And who knows what happens after that? Does Matthew Sluka enter the portal? Like that was like a whole chain of events, right? Then they lose to TCU, and TCU kind of had their way. West Virginia, like you mentioned, also blew that lead. Arizona State, close one. Then they blow out Houston. And it's like, okay, where'd this come from? Because Houston, another team that despite their record, pretty solid, right? And then Kansas State, I think you guys should have won that game, realistically. I think the fourth quarter, you guys went a little silent at the wrong time, and Kansas State was able to
name of the game. Yeah.
Yeah. Worst time to go silent. And then you rattle off 2, like the Iowa State win was dominant. The score doesn't indicate that as much, but it was dominant. Then BYU, you guys made Jake Retzlaff look like, I think the Jake Retzlaff that PFF had ranked as the worst quarterback in the Big 12 prior to the season, they made him look like that. And so this Kansas team, I think will give Colorado more trouble than people realize if they can establish a run, if they could sort of take advantage of Colorado's slow starts. Because I'll be honest with you, Derek, I don't know if there's a stat for this. I don't know if there's a metric, but Colorado's slow starts are absolutely disastrous. Like, I don't know what it is. Their scripted plays may be the worst in the country. It's just first play of last week, pick. Shedeur Sanders throws a pick. North Dakota State, I think they went 3 and out. That one against UCF, Shedeur Sanders pick, like on the very first drive. I don't know what it is about the first drive for Colorado, but they are disastrous. So if Kansas could take advantage of that, this game will end up being a lot closer. And obviously the odds makers, the guys with the crowbars ready to break some kneecaps, they know something's up, right? So we have to sort of be aware of this. For those of you as Colorado fans, this Kansas team is not the Kansas teams of the past where it's like they are the worst team in college football, because this is not the worst team in college football. In fact, I think had they say they had 4 more games on their schedule, Derek, I think they go 3-1. I don't know what the games would be, but I think they'd go 3-1 based off how they're playing. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, they're playing at the right time. It's unfortunate the hole they've gotten in, and that's been kind of a common theme as they've won these past couple weeks. You hear Kansas fans being like, man, that was awesome, but it just makes me wish we would have won 1 or 2 of those other games before, because then you'd be in a better situation to be bowl eligible right now. And this is a program that's never been to 3 straight bowl games. So, like, it does mean something still to Kansas. I know bowl games are becoming the way of the dinosaur a little bit in college football with everything being geared around the playoff, but, like, it does mean something to Kansas. So yeah.
Yeah, and it means something to Colorado, too. I think the one thing I don't want Colorado, new or old fans, to sort of get entrenched in is like, remember where Colorado was, right? Colorado was 1-11 2 years ago. Deion Sanders made a promise to Miss Peggy. If you're not familiar with her, she's this adorable little 100-year-old lady who had a twin sister who unfortunately passed away. I don't know when, but they had always gone to Colorado games, right? And he made a promise to her that they'd get her to a bowl game. And I think a lot of people, Colorado fans, need to remember that this is a big deal for the program to be at a bowl game right now for bowl contention. Now, not only being in conference title contention, that's an even bigger deal, but let's not, if things don't work out how we all hope or think they can for Colorado, this isn't a failure, right? This Colorado program has come out of the mud, as the kids say. And I think Kansas understands that just as well as anyone as well, because these two programs, I think 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago for Kansas, right? It would have been like 1-11 versus 1-11. It would have been rough.
Yeah, I think 3 years ago they would have been 2-10. But I mean, if you go back into the 2010s, you have, I think, multiple 0-12 seasons. You have some 1-11 too. Yeah, not pretty.
So these programs both trending in the right direction. Very, very important that fans remember. It's still a big deal to make a bowl game, regardless of what the playoff, the bougie people of the playoff, the bourgeoisie, if you will, regardless of what they say, it's a big deal. When we come back, we're going to be talking about why Kansas is getting hot and why this should concern Colorado. But first, a quick break. This episode of Locked on Buffs and Locked on Jayhawks is brought to you by Prize Picks. Let me tell you about Prize Picks. This is the best and most fun way to win money. It's a real place that you should go check out right now with over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings. Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You can just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. Run your game all season long on Prize Picks. You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. Sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive that $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks also offers weekly promotions that can lead to huge payouts like Taco Tuesday. Each Tuesday, Prize Picks discounts select players' projections up to 25% to provide even more value for your lineup. So if you want to get in on this action, download the app today and use code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 off, or to get $50 instantly, after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, download the app today and use code LOCKEDONCollege. It's LOCKEDONCOLLEGE to get $50 after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. Welcome back. It's Locked on Buffs. It's Locked on Jayhawks. I'm joined by Derek Johnson. I'm Kevin Borba, if you guys didn't already know. KU's getting hot, Derek. I don't know what happened. I don't know if they maybe had a little come to Jesus moment. I don't know if Lance Leipold pulled off a great speech in the locker room. Why are they hot, and why is it now?
Well, they figured out the quarterback position. They figured out really the play calling. Early in the season, new offensive coordinator Jeff Grimes, they were struggling to find the rhythm, and it didn't help that Jalen Daniels threw a bunch of interceptions. I mean, he was leading the Big 12 in interceptions. He was leading the country in interceptions through the first, I think, 3 or 4 weeks of the season. Since then, Jalen Daniels has looked like the guy we are used to from the 2 previous seasons, where it was never a question about the performance. It was just a question about staying healthy. And he has been awesome for KU these past, I guess, really 4, maybe 5 games. Like the Arizona State game, he was good. The Kansas State game, he was good enough to nearly win the game. Obviously, he had the tough fumble at the end. But, the Houston game, he was good. So I guess like 5 games in a row now, he's looked like that guy. That's a huge difference for this team, because all the way along, even when they were losing games, they were still running the ball well. They were still – the defense isn't it's not a top 5 defense in the conference, but it's been improved from where it has been over the last year and the year before. That's been the big thing. It's been the quarterback play. It's been that. Now, obviously, last week was about the defense and being able to shut down BYU, but beyond that, it's just kind of sticking with it. And that's the biggest thing I can say about this team, about Lance Leipold, about the players right now is the fact that you got to 2-6. You had all these expectations of the world of winning, 9 or 10 games this year, of competing for the Big 12. You didn't do it, but you didn't quit on the season, and this team stayed together, and they're staying resilient to the very end.
Yeah, I think mental toughness is a undervalued quality. I think one of the reasons I felt like Colorado collapsed last year was they lacked it. I think the Stanford game is one that I remember vividly, right? They go up 29-0 at halftime, right? And everyone's vibing with Colorado. It's a Friday night. Shedeur Sanders is posting advertisements on Instagram at halftime. Like it was like this game's over. And then a fella by the name of Alec Ioman from Canada just absolutely like emerges and like breaks out. And from that point on, it felt like every time Colorado got down in a game, or every time there was a negative moment, interception, touchdown or whatever, it felt like they were like, oh, here we go. Like this is the beginning of the collapse here. And I don't see this with Kansas this year, or at least the past few games. And I don't see it with Colorado. One of the things that I would say more proud of, or I guess I've noticed a lot this year for Colorado is their ability to get punched in the mouth and not just like, okay, we tried, like this is it for us. And I think it's going to be really important that they do this against this Kansas team, because you just mentioned it. They found it, right? They found it at quarterback or whatever, but they've also stayed confident. They've stayed mentally tough. They stayed resilient. I think that's an underrated aspect that really isn't a stat. So let's talk about Jalen Daniels. Outside of him not turning the ball over seemingly like every 3 throws, what else has he been doing good at in the stretch?
So he's been running the ball really well. And I think that was something that they were afraid to take the kid gloves off a little bit early because of those aforementioned previous injuries. Only 3 games played last season. Year before that, it was like 8.5 games played, including the bowl game. Right. And they maybe wanted to make sure he was easing into things. Also, he didn't want to get him injured. Well, lately, because their backs are against the wall, they have no more losses they can afford. And feeling like he's gotten more comfortable back in it, they've kind of taken the governor off and they've allowed him to run it a little bit more. So that's added another element to his offensive game. He's hitting guys downfield more. The explosive plays are happening a lot more often, like we were used to seeing in the past. And then the big one is, like he hasn't been throwing interceptions. He did have one against BYU last week that didn't end up leading to points the other way. But besides that, was good holding on to the ball against the last 2 weeks, BYU and Iowa State combined have over 30 interceptions this year. They're the top 2 numbers in the Big 12. He only has 1 interception in those 2 games combined. So night and day from where he was early in the season, like the Illinois game, he's throwing 3 interceptions. I don't know if it's comfortability in the offense for him. I don't know if it's just comfortability of, after missing all that time, finally gaining his confidence back. But whatever it's been a brand new Jalen and a brand new offense.
Maybe, and this is just a suggestion, maybe it's because he doesn't have Jason Bean looking over his shoulder. I'm just saying, Jason Bean was a really good guy. No, I'm just kidding.
But he was really good last 2 years with Jason Bean. So
he was, yeah. No, they had a nice little dynamic there. Realistically, this game is going to come down to a couple of keys for each team. Can Colorado do this? Can Kansas stop that? And we're going to talk about that. But first, a quick break. This episode of Locked On Buffs and Locked On Jayhawks is brought to you by our sponsors over at Z-Biotics, the pre-alcoholic drink, the probiotic drink, is the world's first genetically engineered probiotic. It was invented by PhD scientists to tackle rough mornings after drinking. Here's how it works. When you drink, alcohol gets converted into a toxic byproduct in the gut. This byproduct, not dehydration, that's to blame for your rough next day. Pre-alcohol produces an enzyme to break that byproduct down. Just remember to make Z-Biotics your first drink of the night. Drink responsibly, and you'll feel your best tomorrow. Here's exactly how you need to use it, so that way you don't wake up, not feeling as great, Derek. We'll go with that. Step 1, drink pre-alcohol. For best results, make pre-alcohol your first drink of the night. Step 2, drink responsibly. Pace yourself, hydrate, and get a good night's sleep. And step 3, enjoy tomorrow. Wake up feeling refreshed. Go to zbiotics.com/LockedOnCollege to learn more and get 15% off your first order when you use Locked On College at checkout. Z-Biotics is backed with 100% money back guarantee. So if you're unsatisfied for any reason, they'll refund you your money. No questions asked. Remember to head to zbiotics.com/LockedOnCollege and use code LockedOnCollege at checkout for 15% off. This episode is also brought to you by our sponsors over at FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can bet $5, get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same place where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Okay, Derek, this is Locked On Buffs. It's Locked On Jayhawks. They're squaring off on Saturday. Let me give you the rundown of what you need to know weather-wise, time-wise. Kicking off at 3:30 Eastern. Obviously, we already talked about it. Colorado 3-point favorites. They opened as 2.5-point favorites, so clearly there's a half-point advantage now. I don't know where it came from, but sure, we'll pretend that matters. Colorado 54.5% chance of winning. Game time weather, it's looking a little cloudy. 58 degrees is what the weather projection is. What is a key to victory for Kansas?
Well, can you pressure Shedeur Sanders without blitzing? So Sanders averaging over 9 yards per throw against the blitz this year. It's slightly under 8 when he's not blitzed. And you need that extra coverage to be back because those receivers are really good players. The thing for Kansas, they haven't been a great pass rush team this season. They've been better at the defensive tackle spot than they have at defensive end. Now, their top 2 pass rushers are at defensive end, but consistently, I like the defensive tackle spot a little bit better. Good news is you look at PFF grades, Colorado's offensive line a little weaker on the interior than it would be on the exterior. So maybe that's something good for Kansas here, but you have to be able to get to the quarterback and hit him without being able to blitz because, one, they aren't always consistent in wanting to blitz, but two, if you end up having to blitz because you're not getting pressure, one, then that becomes a little bit more predictable, and two, then all of a sudden it's kind of a 50-50 over is Shedeur Sanders just going to go for like 400 yards, 500 yards or something like that? Like that's kind of the scare in this one if you end up being in that situation. I think on the offensive end of the ball, got to establish the run. Colorado's actually been pretty good against the run so far this season. They're giving up under 4 yards per carry. You do go back to the Kansas State game, though, which was the one loss for Colorado. DJ Giddens had over 180 yards rushing. Devin Neal is an awesome running back. He's celebrating senior day. He's the local Lawrence kid who is the all-time career rusher for KU. Go out and have a big game. Give him 25, 30 carries, possess the football, keep the Colorado offense off the field, try to get 200 yards, whatever it takes, run the ball, and try to keep that other offense off the field and grind things out.
So those are the keys for Kansas winning the game. I'll talk about the keys for Colorado winning the game. For starters, I think the defense needs to make this a Jalen Daniels game where it's no Devin Neal, right? If Devin Neal gets going, that's where we've seen Colorado struggle. In their 2 losses, both teams were able to run the ball, right? And obviously they've dramatically improved after both those games, but still any day in the Big 12, anything can happen. So take Devin Neal out of this game and make Jalen Daniels beat Travis Hunter, right? Beat DJ McKinney, Preston Hodge. I think Colorado arguably has one of the better secondaries in college football right now, headlined by Travis Hunter, and make it so Daniels has to beat you with his arm. I'm not saying he can't, but that's not his game, right? He's not a guy who could solely beat you just airing that thing out. And if this turns into a Shedeur Sanders versus Jalen Daniels shootout, I personally would trust Shedeur Sanders. That's kind of like the situation that he thrives in the most. And then offensively, you got to protect Shedeur Sanders. That's always a must. He's still getting sacked a lot. It has improved, and some of the sacks are actually his fault. I think it's been, I want to say the last 3 games, PFF has credited him with more sacks or as many sacks in the offensive line, where it's just him holding the ball too long and not getting rid of it. So Shedeur needs to protect himself. The offensive line needs to protect him as well. And I think Colorado has a chance to win this game. Derek, before we go, do you have a bold prediction for this game?
Man, bold prediction for this game. I'll say somebody gets a pick 6. How about that?
Ooh,
I mean, that doesn't always happen every game, but there's a lot of guys who can do it. Like, right, Travis Hunter can obviously do it, right? Kobe Bryant, Melo Dotson, we've seen them do it multiple times each throughout their career. So I'll say somebody gets a pick 6. But beyond that, I think what's interesting is Colorado. I was looking, Shedeur Sanders completing 83% of his passes over the middle of the field. That is really good. And Kansas struggles the most defensively guarding the pass over the middle of the field. But of Shedeur Sanders, 7 interceptions, 6 of them are interceptions over the middle. So maybe it's a linebacker getting a pick 6 or something for Kansas. Maybe it's Jalen Daniels having one of those old interception issues and it gets pick 6. I'll say somebody has a pick 6 in this one.
I'm going to go, and obviously the spread may not make this as bold, but I think this comes down to the final possession. And it feels bold in the sense that Colorado has won their past, I think, 4 games by double digits. They've been hot. They've been blowing teams out. Even the Texas Tech game, it was a little close at the end there, but the game wasn't that close in the second half. Colorado had taken over. So I think it comes down to the final possession. I think this game is going to be uncomfortably close for Colorado, and I don't know what's going to happen. I don't have the crystal ball in front of me, but I know it's going to be a great game. Derek, I appreciate you for doing this. I appreciate you for crossing over with me. This has been Locked On Buffs and Locked On Jayhawks. Make us your first listen wherever you get your podcast. Make sure to like, subscribe, and follow, and we will see you guys during our live reaction shows on Saturday or Sunday, depending on when Derek does his. But we appreciate you guys and all the support that you give us, and we will see you guys tomorrow.